I'm Charles McCain. The book I'm going to review now, Torpedoes in the Gulf, Galveston and the U-Boats, 1942 to 1943, is an account of the U-boat offensive in the Gulf of Mexico, which most people aren't familiar with. And what makes it fascinating is not so much, the history, which is interesting, is the paranoia it created throughout the Gulf South, particularly in places like Galveston that were major ports. And one of those things was they would measure the amount of fuel in every fishing boat every morning that left Galveston Harbor and measure it again when they came back into port just to make sure they hadn't refueled a German U-boat. They became convinced that that people on shore were signaling U-boats. They told people to watch their neighbors, and of course, if you had neighbors you didn't like, you just watched them, assuming they were spies. They had articles in the paper about how they had arrested people for doing things, and of course, none of those were ever substantiated. And you know, the conclusion they came to was, well, people on shore have to be helping, or there'd have to be some sort of like U-boat, I don't know, supply U-boat, some big, and of course there was. That's exactly what was going on. There were specific U-boats, supply U-boats, supplying the other U-boats. But this book is the paranoia is what's interesting about this book. And then the other thing that there's a piece in it which is just, I just found sort of very unusual and strange. A German U-boat sinks a freighter that actually was neutral. But the freighter, once they saw the U-boat, started radioing for help and giving their position to the American authorities. And that actually is against international law. But after they sank the ship captain, he rowed up alongside the U-boat and he yelled to the commander, "I didn't know that Honduras was at war with Germany. Why did you sink my ship?" Because the ship was registered in Honduras. "You radioed for help from an American airplane to be used against me," the U-boat commander shouted back. "Those were my orders. In a case like that, my orders were to sink your ship." And then the U-boat went off. And what's strange about that is, who would start arguing with a U-boat captain who had just sunk your ship? And yet that's exactly what the guy did. And so there are strange incidents that happen in war. That's one of them. Quite a fascinating book. I give it 3 stars because it's doesn't, have, not as complete as it should be, but an interesting read.